the Player's Handbook. Everything a player needs to create heroic characters for the world's greatest role-playing game. World's greatest role-playing game. Is it really? Kept you waiting, huh? Hey everyone, CJ here, back with a brand new video, and this time I'm diving into the depths of cosmic insanity by comparing two of my most favorite tabletop role-playing games, Dungeons & Dragons and The Call of Cthulhu. Oh yes, I can already imagine what the comment section would be like. Sanity roll please. Anyway, let's just get onto it. I haven't heard the intro for ages. Q2? Oh yeah, also I've got a big announcement to make later in the video, so keep watching. Intro. Before I get to the main point, here's a quick primer on D&D and Call of Cthulhu. I am sure a lot of you know what Dungeons & Dragons is. It's that game that lets you seduce a dragon with a roll of a dice, hunt halflings and roleplay murderous hobos, among other fun things. It comes under the classification of tabletop role-playing games. The Call of Cthulhu is also a tabletop role-playing game, based on a short story written by H.P. Lovecraft. Like D&D, it is also played by players who roleplay characters and a game master who tell the story and create encounters. But that's as far as the similarities go. D&D focuses on completing quests, fighting monsters, and experiencing your character's growth through their hero's journey. They will get progressively more powerful and you get to feel like you're on top of the world when you eventually take down that Tarrasque. Call of Cthulhu, on the other hand, is a survival horror mystery game featuring cosmic Lovecraftian horror. The players get to roleplay mundane characters in 1920s Americas. So you can be a flapper, sailor, industrialist, or whatever. There are scenarios and third-party supplements that let you play in other time periods, like the Second World War or the Vietnam War era. But classically, the game is set in Prohibition-era 1920s. Usually, the objective for the players is to solve mysteries connected to overwhelming cosmic horrors that operate in ways beyond mortal reckoning. Investigation and role-playing is the main focus of the game. There is combat, but it is completely lethal. It is usually best avoided unless necessary. But even if you manage to get your backside out of the trajectory of hot lead, you will have to contend against the creeping influence of insanity-inducing horror, which will pull you along the downward spiral of irrecoverable madness, as your sanity points drips down to zero. Fundamentally, these two games provide diametrically opposite experiences. Dungeons & Dragons lifts you up and indulges your power fantasies, while Call of Cthulhu drives you down the dark valley of despair. Until you thought that all hope is lost, you find sweet release. If you're any good at the game, it won't come in the form of swift death or insanity. If you want me to use video games for comparison, Dungeons & Dragons is like Final Fantasy, back when it was actually good. And Call of Cthulhu is like Resident Evil, with less guns and better fashion sense. Many of you who are familiar with D&D but not Call of Cthulhu might be from America, US of A, where D&D is synonymous with Tabletop RPG. Even though both these games were created in America, in European countries, like Poland for example, or Asian countries like Japan, the Great Old One is the king of tabletop RPGs. It is popular because it offers things that are unique and different to other tabletop RPGs. Even if you're a die-hard D&D fan, you should really try COC. But before we go into conciliatory mode, let's pit these two bad boys against each other and see which one deserves the crown of the best. To properly compare these two games, we need bullet points. Ah yeah, nothing gets your blood boiling like a hardcore list of bullet points, eh? Let's start with the themes. D&D is a fantasy adventure. You get your elves, dwarves and dragons and you can shoot great balls of fire out of your fingers. Classic COC is set in our world, in the roaring 20s, when style and glitz dominated. Meanwhile, the pernicious forces of cosmic horrors lurks beneath. it is a combination of the familiar and the exotic past. This game also officially lets you play a hobo, so I would give that an extra point. To be fair, in COC, you have full customization options, and you can be any occupation you want. D&D has limited number of classes, but they each provide unique playing experiences. D&D has a strong focus in combat. This is to be expected, since most of the rules in the player handbook is related to combat. Meanwhile, COC focuses on investigation and role-playing. Finding the right clues and persuading the right people to help can save your character from mortal danger. This is also where the games greatly diverge. To use game design term, the compulsion loop of D&D is to explore, kill monsters, get rewarded by experience points and loot, then rinse and repeat. There can be social and exploration encounters in between, but since the activity that nets the players the most reward is combat, then naturally the players would drift towards certain behaviors. To be honest, D&D isn't really that fun if all you do is combat. If that's all you do, then you would just go back to wargaming, which D&D sprung out of. In my opinion, part of the reason for D&D's resurgence is because it offers something more than the tight and hyper-focused game loop that video games offer. In fact, the writers at Wizards of the Coast seem to be aware of this. That's why they have been incorporating milestone leveling into their hardcovers. Even more recently, they are using advancement checkpoints in Adventurers League, which rewards players for completing objectives rather than killing monsters. Sure, a great dungeon master should also be a great game designer. They can homebrew rules to create desired experience for their players, but it still takes a bit of work. Call of Cthulhu, on the other hand, has a more complex loop. The general philosophy of the game is that the more the player risks their own safety by investigating dark corners or fighting eldritch abominations and survive, they will be better rewarded. So this is the biggest difference. You get to choose fight or flight. Running away here is always a viable solution. So does fire usually. But the burden of guilt will weigh down on your characters and gnaws into their sanity if they do nothing. They will eventually lose their mind if they keep running away. Another good thing about Call of Cthulhu is that it is a relatively easy game to learn as players. Yes, even easier than 5th edition D&D. It is a great system to introduce new players to. Simultaneously, it also has a low skill ceiling, so players would have to rely on their noggins to achieve spectacular effects, instead of relying on high-leveled class features or spells. This is really a matter of preference. Some players may prefer more depth and want to have more class features. But the flip side is, as they say, if you are given hammers, every problem looks like nails. When it comes to game mastering, however, Call of Cthulhu is a harder game to game master. Because in D&D, if you know how to play the game as a player, all you need to do is to pick up an adventure module and run the game like a recipe. A rookie DM just have to run their players sequentially through the dungeon rooms. They may choose different paths until they reach the boss at the end of the dungeon, but it doesn't really make that big of a difference. Call of Cthulhu, on the other hand, is much more open-ended. The players are usually free to explore the locations they are in, or multiple locations. There is a chronological timeline of events that will take place during the scenario, or even before. But what complicates things is that if certain events, like a fire, is prevented from happening, it would cause a butterfly effect, and the Game Master, or Keeper as they are called in Call of Cthulhu, would have to come up with their own consequences. The NPCs don't just stay in certain locations too, they are meant to act and behave like real people, according to their written personality, of course. So the Keeper basically has to become the AI that controls their actions in possibly unforeseen situations. Some very experienced dungeon masters can easily do this, but it is usually quite hard for rookie game masters to do. Well, there you go. These are the list of strengths and weaknesses for each games. Every one of you have your own preferences, so it is up to you to decide which one is the best game for you. So comment below and tell us which one you think is the better game. Personally, the best campaign experience I've ever had the pleasure of game mastering was a Call of Cthulhu campaign. Mask of Nyarlathotep. But over the years, Dungeons & Dragons had consistently provided me with many great campaigns. I love both of these games. Actually, I think every D&D players and dungeon masters should play Call of Cthulhu to broaden their horizon and expand their skill set by borrowing elements from other games, and vice versa. Maybe even try other games like Vampire the Masquerade or even some variation of the Fate games. It is not just about learning a new system. You should try other games so that you could experience different gamer culture. Different gaming groups have their own gaming traditions and habits. And gaming groups centered around a different system usually have very unique ways of playing their games. If you want to level up your gaming skills as a game master or player, this is one of the quickest ways to go about it. Think of it as cross-training. Coincidentally, this segues nicely into my announcement. Some of you who saw the graphics can probably guess what this is going to be about. Yes, I am launching a new How to Play series. How to Play the Call of Cthulhu 7th edition, the latest edition. This time, I have collaborated with some really talented artists to bring you really cool graphics and better experience. And I've also got myself a new makeover. Ta-da! What do you think? You like the new Art Deco decor? Alright friends, stay tuned for the new series because it is going to be insanely cool. CJ, over and out.